I could feel the heat of his breath against my neck as he murmured those words. You're not meant to love me. You're meant to be mine. Yet I remained still. Not when his arm encircled my waist as though it belonged there. Not when his deep, steady voice claimed me in ways his ring never had. Not even when I understood I wasn't fighting back anymore. I was giving in, but there was something he hadn't realized. Possession works in both directions. If you're still with me, it means something in that quiet moment spoke to you. So hit that like button, let it stay with you, and subscribe for stories that don't beg for your attention. They deserve it. I had exactly 17 minutes to abandon my marriage. 18, if you include the minute I spent destroying everything. The courtroom felt too bright for my current state. Frigid in that particular way air becomes when it's been filtered endlessly. Sterile, dead. I sat opposite Graham in complete silence. My hands felt frozen, not trembling exactly. Just cold, as if they'd lost the memory of seeking warmth. His eyes never found mine. They never really had. Not the way people look when they're searching for something deeper in your gaze. He simply waited, businesslike, distant, treating this like a corporate meeting where my identity was merely another item to check off his list. The judge spoke with practiced calm. Mrs. Rutherford, do you agree to dissolve your marriage to Mr. Graham? Rutherford? The pen felt surprisingly heavy in my grip. Blue ink against pristine white paper. My signature was anticipated, clean, decisive. A simple act that would conclude 18 months of silent rooms, formal meals, and days that stretched like endless winter highways, but I couldn't move. My attorney whispered, "It's all right, Annabelle. Go ahead and sign." I didn't. I couldn't because something inside me, something defiant and small, yet still alive, refused to let this end without speaking the truth. So I met Graham's gaze. He continued staring ahead, posture immaculate, face unreadable. And I spoke clearly and firmly. No, I don't consent to this divorce. I heard someone's sharp intake of breath behind me. I felt the room shift, that silence that isn't truly quiet. But people adjusting their expectations. Even Graham's composure cracked slightly. The judge's eyebrow lifted, but she remained quiet for several moments. Then she responded more gently than expected. Very well. The court cannot proceed without mutual agreement. It was finished. Not the divorce itself, but something else entirely. I rose slowly, not waiting for Graham. I simply left the corridor. Smelled of polished wood and something faintly metallic, perhaps from the elevator buttons or the tension in my blood. I stood by the windows, watching wind dance with the flags outside. He emerged minutes later, unhurried, suddenly present. Beside me without looking my way, yet somehow there. You had every justification to leave, he said quietly. I understand. I assumed you wanted to. I did, I replied. I still might, but not today. He finally turned toward me, and for once his eyes weren't cold, just weary. Why? I wanted to say something eloquent or powerful, something that sounded wise, like my mother might have. But all I could offer was honesty, because I don't think we finished saying what we need to say. He didn't respond, but his shoulders relaxed just a fraction. That was the first time he didn't feel like a complete stranger. We wed nearly 2 years ago. No flowers, no vows, just a courthouse, a signature, and an arrangement. He would finance my younger brother's medical care, a bone marrow transplant we couldn't afford and didn't have time to wait for. In exchange, I'd become Mrs. Graham Rutherford in name, appearance, and silence. It wasn't love. It wasn't even kindness. It was business, but I agreed. I was 21. My mother had just passed, and the world felt like a house stripped of all its furniture. He was cold but clear, unsentimental. That seemed safe then, that first night in his home, his mansion. I remember walking past portraits of strangers. His family, I presumed, all sharp suits and proud expressions. I didn't feel like I belonged there. I didn't even feel real. He left me alone most evenings, took meals in his study, worked until late. Our few conversations were always imperfect. Sentences as if we were rehearsing a play neither of us had auditioned for. He was never cruel, never unkind, and that was harder than hatred. That evening after court, I prepared tea. Earl Grey, the same kind my mother drank when she needed to think. The bergamot scent filled the kitchen. I took my cup to the study, not expecting him to be there, but not wanting solitude either. He stood by the window, hands in pockets, jacket still buttoned. I hesitated at the doorway. "I thought you might have left," he said without turning. I almost did. I placed the cup on the side table. He approached, looked at it, then at me. "I don't know what to do with this," he admitted. "You staying?" "You don't need to do anything," I said. "Just don't vanish." He nodded then. The smallest movement, but it meant everything. Later, in my room, our room, though we never used that term, I discovered a small wooden box on my pillow. Unwrapped, no note, just the box. Inside was a coin, silver, worn smooth on one side, my mother's lucky coin. I'd lost it the day of her funeral. I lifted it carefully. Underneath, in his handwriting, were 5 words. "I've kept this for you." I held it in my palm for a long time, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to cry. Not from pain, but because I realized I wasn't alone in remembering what mattered. He knocked on my door that night. Not loudly, just 3 gentle taps, like he was asking permission from the silence first. I sat at the small writing desk by the window. The room was warm, lit only by a single lamp with a faded cream shade. Outside, wind moved through the garden trees the same way my mother used to braid my hair. Slow, deliberate, and slightly too tight at the ends. "May I come in?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure what kind of yes it would be. Eventually I said, "You're already halfway here. You might as well finish." He stepped inside and remained. Just past the threshold. His posture was formal as always, but his tie was gone. His sleeves were rolled up. He looked human. "You didn't sleep much last night," he said. It wasn't a question. "I haven't slept well in months," I replied. He nodded as if he already knew. Maybe he did. Then he asked almost gently, "Would you have dinner with me?" I stared at him. For a moment, I thought he meant some charity event or business function. But then I saw it in his expression, that small flicker of vulnerability that only appeared when he wasn't sure what to expect. "You mean now?" I asked. He nodded. "I thought we stopped doing that after the first week," I said. "We never started." The dining room at Rutherford Hall is larger than necessary. The chandelier alone belongs in a European opera house. But tonight the lights were dimmed. Only the table candles were lit. The rest of the room faded into soft shadows. He had cooked. I was so surprised I actually laughed a little. "It didn't peg you for the roast chicken type," I said. He gave a half shrug. "There are things you don't know about me." I sat. The chair felt colder than usual, but the aroma of rosemary and garlic warmed the air. No servers, no wine poured by uniformed staff, just us. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a negotiation. "Do you remember the night your mother died?" he asked after a while. The fork froze halfway to my mouth. I set it down slowly. "Yes," I said, "of course. I watched you from across the chapel. You were trying to hold everything together for your brother, for the guests, for her. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I wanted to approach you that day," he continued, "but I didn't know how. So I left the offer instead." I looked at him then, not the man from headlines or boardroom tables, just the man sitting across from me, wearing an apron over his shirt, one cuff still stained with marinade, trying in his awkward way to offer something genuine. Why now? I asked. Why tonight? He didn't look away. Because I never wanted to divorce you, Annabelle. I wanted a way out of the lie we both agreed to live. I pushed the plate away, not from anger, but because I didn't want this to be just a moment. I wanted to remember it clearly. You said you didn't want love. I didn't, he said. Back then, love cost me something I wasn't prepared to lose again. There was weight behind those words. Not drama, just truth. And I remembered what I'd discovered in his office, the voided license, the unsent letter. Who was she? I asked softly. He didn't flinch. She was meant to be my wife, but I waited too long. I offered her everything except what she needed most. Certainty. And now he smiled, barely a crack in the frost. I'm not sure what I'm offering you yet, but it's not silence anymore. After dinner, I walked past the room I'd never entered. The one on the west side of the house with frosted glass doors and heavy velvet curtains. It had been his mother's studio. That much I knew, but it had always been locked, untouched. Tonight it was open. Soft light spilled out. Not bright, not beckoning, just warm. I stepped inside. It smelled like old books, oil paint, and something citrusy. Lemon balm, maybe? The windows were dusty, but light filtered in golden and heavy, like it had waited a long time to be seen again. On the desk, I found a sketch. Half finished, a woman's face, eyes lowered, not smiling, but peaceful. She used to paint you, Graham, said behind me. I turned. He stood in the doorway, watching me the way someone watches a fragile vase teeter on a shelf, ready to catch it or mourn it. I didn't know she even noticed me, I whispered. She noticed everything. That's why I locked this room. I wasn't ready to notice what she saw. The silence between us felt full, not empty, like a page waiting for the next. Line. He took one step forward. I've kept too many doors shut, he said, but this one, I opened it for you. I didn't answer. I just stood there, the scent of lemon balm rising and the sketch still unfinished under my fingertips. Something in me wanted to cry. Not from sadness, but from the way hope sometimes hurts when it returns too suddenly. That night, I didn't close my bedroom door. And when I glanced back just once before turning in, I saw it. The studio light still glowing softly across the hall. A room that had stayed dark for years, now illuminated again. It's strange how quickly we can begin to hope again, even after we've trained ourselves not to. The morning after that quiet dinner, I woke before sunrise. I didn't even realize it at first. I just knew the room felt different, lighter, like something invisible had been lifted from my chest during the night and hadn't returned. I pulled the blanket closer around my shoulders, still curled in bed, and listened. The house was quiet, but not empty. I could hear distant footsteps, one set, familiar, measured. Graham. He always moved like a man who knew exactly where he was going. Even when he didn't, I made tea and brought it to the garden where the air still held that clean, wet scent of morning dew. The sky was bruised purple and soft pink, and for a moment, I forgot why I had ever felt unwelcome here. When he joined me, he didn't speak at first, just sat beside me on the bench, our elbows not quite touching. It was the kind of silence I used to fill with overthinking. Now it felt almost gentle. Did you sleep? He asked. I nodded. I think so. He handed me a folded newspaper. You made the society column again? They think your refusal to divorce me is part of some power play. I rolled my eyes. Let them think whatever they want. He smiled just barely. That's new. What is? That fire in you. I missed it. I turned to him and for the first time asked the question that had haunted me since our wedding day. Why me, Graham? Why did you choose me for this arrangement? He looked straight ahead as if the answer were somewhere in the trees. Because you didn't ask for anything, he said quietly. You never begged, never pushed, never tried to impress me. You just were. And somehow that answer broke something open inside me that I didn't realize I'd locked. Later that day, I wandered into the west wing of the house, somewhere I'd avoided for months, out of habit or fear. I wasn't sure. The studio door was still open, the light still on. Inside, the air smelled like memory, cedar wood and old pages and faint perfume. I moved slowly, as if walking through someone else's mind. The sketch of the woman was gone. In its place was a canvas covered in cloth. I didn't lift it. I couldn't. Some things ask for patience. Some things need to stay unknown just a little longer. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something else. A drawer half open, a file left out. And inside it, a letter typed, official, stamped. Marriage annulment agreement, dated 3 weeks ago. My name, his signature, filed, but not submitted. I didn't know what to feel. Relief, betrayal, a little. Of both. He hadn't told me. He'd made it look like he was letting go, but he wasn't. I found him in the greenhouse, tending to plants I didn't know he cared about. He wore gloves, sleeves rolled up, dirt on his fingers. You filed for annulment? I asked. No preamble. He didn't flinch. Didn't look surprised. I did, he said, and then I didn't send it. Why? He set the shears down, wiped his hands, and finally looked at me. Because I wrote that when I thought you'd never sit beside me at dinner again. I thought I was setting you free. I stepped closer. Why not just tell me? His voice was quiet. Because I was afraid you'd thank me. That answer made me ache in a way I couldn't quite name, because I understood it. There's a kind of loneliness that hides itself behind logic and clean breaks. The kind that pretends walking away is noble, when in truth you're just terrified. No one will stay if they truly see you. I took the gloves from his hands and set them aside. I wouldn't have thanked you, I said. He nodded like he believed me, or wanted to. That night, I sat at the desk in my room and wrote a letter I never planned to send to my mother. I told her what I'd seen, what I'd felt, how the man I'd married for duty had turned out to be more human, more fractured, and maybe more worthy of love than I'd expected. I told her about the garden, the tea, the studio, and I told her about the fear that if I let myself fall for him now, I'd never recover if he left again. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer next to the coin he had returned. Before bed, I passed his office. The door was ajar. He wasn't inside, but the fireplace was lit, and on the desk was a photograph, black and white, slightly curled. It was of me laughing from 2 years ago at a charity event I barely remembered attending. I wasn't looking at the camera. I was, mid-laugh, hair loose, holding a glass of something sparkling. He had kept this all this time. I didn't cry, I didn't smile. But I understood in that quiet moment that I had never really been invisible to him. And somehow that changed everything. The house had a way of holding its breath when something was about to break. That morning I felt it. I just stepped out of the shower, towel still wrapped around my hair, when I heard voices, quiet, muffled, but sharp enough to cut through the hall outside my room. Not arguments, not shouting, but tension that rang clearer than any raised voice. I opened the door slightly, enough to hear the end of a sentence spoken by Graham's head of legal. Miles, I think his name was, always too smooth, too rehearsed. And if she finds out, it could undo everything. My breath caught. Graham didn't answer right away. Then low and clipped. I'm aware. You should have destroyed the file. I couldn't. You mean you wouldn't? A pause, then footsteps. Silence again. By the time I stepped into the hallway, they were both gone. But the stillness stayed behind like smoke after a fire. I didn't go after him, not immediately. Instead, I went to the one place in the house where things made sense, the kitchen. I brewed tea with hands that didn't want to tremble. I gripped the counter edges until my knuckles ached. I reminded myself of all the things I already knew about Graham, the walls he built, the way he carried regret like a second skin. But this was different. This was a secret, and it had my name written in its shadow. That evening, I didn't touch my dinner. I sat at the table watching steam curl from my cup and waited. He came in late, tie loosened, face tired, the look of a man who'd fought a battle he couldn't tell anyone about and lost. I didn't stand, didn't smile. Who was the file about? I asked calmly. He closed his eyes for a moment, then walked over and sat across from me like someone sitting in a confessional. You heard us. I did. He nodded once like he'd expected this to happen eventually. There's something you should know, he said, about your mother. My chest tightened. Graham, he held up a hand. Not to silence me, but to steady himself. I never had an affair with her, he said, but my father almost did. I blinked. What? She worked for him. You knew that. But you don't know how close it came to something more. She ended it before it began, but my father, he didn't take rejection well. I felt my pulse hammering in my throat. He threatened her. No, but he made her life here very difficult. She left quietly with you, and I didn't know the truth until I found the letter she wrote before she died, a letter addressed to me. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded page, aged, soft around the edges. She said she forgave my family, that she didn't want the past to shape my future, that you deserve better than the shadows we'd cast. I stared at the letter. My name wasn't on it, but I could see her handwriting from where I sat. She had lived deeply and suffered silently, just like me. He didn't. Asked me to forgive him, but he didn't hide either. And that somehow was more powerful. I reached for the letter with slow hands, afraid it would vanish if I blinked. Reading it was like hearing her voice again, firm, loving, unafraid. You may think I hated you, Graham. I didn't. I pitied you. A boy raised by power, not people. If you ever love someone, truly love them, give them what your father never gave me, the truth. I folded the letter and set it down, then looked him in the eye. You kept this from me. Yes. Why? Because I didn't want you to see me the way you see him. I stood slowly, walking past him to the window that overlooked the garden. The sky was turning the color of copper and bruises. Sunset coming too fast. You're not him, I said. But you are still hiding. He said nothing. So I asked the question that had burned under my skin since I heard that conversation. What else is in that file? There was a long pause. Then it's not about your mother. It's about you. I turned around. What do you mean? He swallowed hard. When I first approached you with the offer to marry, it wasn't a coincidence. I knew about your family's debt, about Tim. I had someone investigate you thoroughly. My breath hitched. So I was a project. No, he said quickly. You were a lifeline. But I didn't see that at first. His voice cracked just slightly, the first crack I'd ever heard in it. I was trying to fix something broken in me. I thought if I helped you, maybe I wasn't beyond repair. But then you walked into my life and didn't ask for anything. And I didn't know how to let that in. The words hurt, but not in the way I expected. Not betrayal, not shame, more like grief for both of us, for everything this marriage could have been if we just started with. Honesty, I don't need you to save me, Graham, I said, but I needed you to see me. I do now, he whispered, and for once I believed him. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rustle through the trees outside. Somewhere down the hall, I knew he was doing the same. 2 people in 2 rooms, both wide awake. both holding pieces of the truth they didn't know how to live with yet. But maybe not running from it anymore. I left the house before sunrise. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a message. I didn't even tell Graham I'd be gone. I just packed a light coat, a scarf, and the coin he'd returned to me, and walked out the front door like I belonged to myself again. The driver asked where to. I said, the red house on Montgomery Street, south side. He didn't question it. Maybe my voice told him not to. The house hadn't changed. It was still red, still peeling in the same corners. The porch steps still creaked on the second one down, and the wind still rushed through the alley between it and the bakery like it was in a hurry to forget something, but everything around it felt smaller now. The gate leaned a little farther. The mailbox hung open, and the jasmine my mother once trimmed with bare fingers now wrapped wildly around the fence. As if no one had dared stop it since she passed, I stood at the front door a long while before. Knocking, I don't know why I knocked. No one had lived there since we left. Inside, the air smelled like old fabric and time, that kind of dusty sweetness you only get from rooms where nothing new has happened in a while. The walls still held the nails where our family pictures used to hang. The light switch by the entry still stuck on the first try. And in the kitchen, God, the kitchen, the small dent from where Tim had dropped the kettle that burned his arm was still there near the corner. I had screamed. My mother had rushed in with cold water and the calm voice only mothers can conjure under fire. She had sung to him that night, her voice cracking, soft. I remembered every word of that lullaby. I made tea on the old stovetop with a packet I'd brought in my coat. The kettle took longer than it should have, but waiting in that silence, surrounded by everything we had once been, felt like a kind of penance. And when it finally whistled, I turned to the drawer I'd avoided for years, the third one down, under the wooden spoons and loose batteries. There it was, the little velvet pouch. My mother's. I used to think it was jewelry, something valuable. She didn't want us touching. But when I opened it now, my breath caught Dot inside were three things. A photograph of her and a man I didn't recognize, young, bright-eyed, in black and white. A charm bracelet I'd never seen before. And a folded page. The handwriting was hers. I'd know it anywhere. Annabelle, if you found this, it means you've come home looking for something. Maybe answers, maybe forgiveness, maybe just peace. There are things I didn't tell you. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I wanted to protect the girl you were. And trust the woman you would become. Love isn't made of certainty, it's made of courage. And the only thing more dangerous than loving the wrong person is not loving at all. Choose with your eyes open, but don't be afraid to choose. I folded the letter and held it against my chest, like it could fill the hollow space that still ached under my ribs. I stayed in that kitchen for another hour, drinking tea, letting myself feel everything I'd spent 2 years burying. When I returned to Rutherford Hall, the sun was setting in amber waves across the long driveway. The house looked gold in the light, not cold. He was standing on the front steps, sleeves rolled up like he'd been pacing the stone for hours. He didn't speak when he saw me, didn't scold, didn't sigh, just exhaled like someone who'd finally found the missing half of a sentence. I went home, I said as I climbed the steps, to the old place. His eyes flickered. You went alone. I had to. He nodded. And did you find what you were looking for? No, I said, but I found what I needed. I pulled the letter from my coat pocket, held it for a second, then slid it into his hand. She wrote to me too, I added. But it's not just for me. He unfolded the paper and read in silence. When he looked up, his voice was rough. She was braver than both of us. Still is, I said. We didn't talk much that evening, but the silence felt clean now. Not heavy, not scared. After dinner, he walked me to my room, and at the threshold, he stopped. I didn't sleep last night, he admitted. I... No. I kept thinking about that day we signed the contract. You didn't flinch. Not even once. I was terrified, I said, but not of you. Then what? I hesitated, then told him the truth of what it might mean if I wanted it to be real. He stepped back like the words had hit him physically, and then he laughed, quiet, disbelieving. You think I wasn't terrified too? He asked Dot, and just like that, the years of distance cracked. Just a little, just enough to breathe through. That night, I didn't close the door to my room. And just before midnight, I heard his footsteps pause outside. He didn't knock. He didn't enter. But he stayed there just outside the frame of the doorway for a long time. Long enough to let me know he wasn't leaving. Not yet. The first cold front of the season arrived just after midnight. The wind slipped through the window sills like a whisper that wouldn't leave me alone. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, watching the sheer curtains breathe in and out against the moonlight. I didn't know if Graham was asleep. I didn't know if I wanted him to be. All I knew was that something had shifted since I came home. Not with declarations, not with promises, but with presence, with stillness, with the space he gave me to find my own voice. Even if it meant stepping away from him, I found him in the library the next morning, not reading, just standing there, holding an old leather-bound volume he wasn't really looking at. He looked up when I entered. You always come in quietly, he said. I wasn't trying to surprise you. I know, you're just not made of noise. I smiled faintly. Is that a compliment? It is now. He closed the book gently and placed it back on the shelf. You said once that silence scared you, he added. It used to, but now I think I just didn't know how to listen to it. He nodded and then said nothing at all. We spent that day circling each other, not avoiding, not retreating, just orbiting. I spent the morning in the conservatory, tending to the neglected orchids. He worked in the study, phone pressed to his ear, murmuring in clipped, careful tones. We met once in the hallway. He stepped aside for me. I didn't pass. We stood like that for a breath longer than we needed to, then kept walking. That night, the house was quiet again, but not asleep. I felt it before I heard it. Footsteps across the floor above mine. Slow, deliberate, then silence. Then a door opening. Not mine, his. Then a minute later, too fast, too loud, another door. The front one. I rose instinctively. Something was wrong. I found him in the foyer, suit jacket off, shirt wrinkled. He wasn't wearing shoes. He was sitting on the floor, his back to the staircase, elbows on his knees, hands locked in his hair like he was trying to hold his own head together. Graham. He didn't look up. I messed up, he said so quietly I barely heard it. I stepped closer. What happened? They called tonight, the investors. He laughed once, bitter. They think I've gone soft. That this marriage is making me sentimental, weak. I knelt beside him. You're not weak. I let them believe I didn't care about anything. That made me powerful. He finally looked at me, and then I married you. I didn't speak because sometimes silence isn't empty. Sometimes it's the only thing strong enough to hold grief. I didn't mean to fall for you, Annabelle, he said, voice rough. You were never supposed to be real. You were supposed to be safe, controlled. He took a shaky breath. But then you stayed, and you smiled in rooms full of ghosts, and you listened to things I didn't say out loud. And now I can't unsee you. His hand found mine. Not demanding, not possessive, just there, warm, uncertain, wanting. I don't know how to be loved by someone who sees through me, he said. I answered softly, then don't look away. He dropped his gaze. I'm terrified. So am I. He exhaled like the weight of the entire year had finally caved in around him. Then, without a word, He moved to his knees in front of me. Not for show, not for drama. Just because some truths require your whole body to say them. I don't deserve you, he whispered. I cupped his face gently. No one earns love, Graham. We just choose it, or we don't. He closed his eyes, and in that moment, there on the cold marble floor of his perfect house, his breath uneven against my wrist, I saw the man behind the title. Not the CEO, not the heir, not the contract. Just Graham. And I loved him quietly. Wholly. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't touch more than hands and breath and the space between words. But it was more intimate than anything I'd known, because for the first time he let me hold what he always hid. And for the first time I didn't flinch. Later, as we sat on the floor side by side, our shoulders touching, I asked the question I'd been afraid to voice for weeks. Did you marry me to own me? His reply came after a long, long pause. No, he said. I married you to control the narrative, to fix something broken in my name. But I stayed married to you because he trailed off. I turned to him because his voice cracked just once, because I didn't know who I was without you. And maybe that was the truest thing he'd ever said. The letter arrived the next morning. No courier, no signature, just a white envelope slipped under the front door like a secret too ashamed to knock. I found it first. There was no name on the front, just the logo of the Rutherford Group embossed in gold. I knew that logo. I'd signed it on forms, seen it on donation plaques, worn it on the edge of a name tag during a gala I hadn't even wanted to attend. But this envelope felt heavier than paper. I carried it into the kitchen like it might shatter if I moved too fast. Graham walked in just as I was slicing it open. He stopped mid-step when he saw it. You weren't supposed to see that, he said. Too late. Inside were 12 printed pages, legal language, shareholder concerns, proposals for restructuring. And at the bottom, a formal motion calling for Graham's removal as CEO. I stared at the last page. It didn't shake in my hand, but something in me did. You knew this was coming, I said. I did. And you weren't going to tell me. I didn't want you to feel responsible. You married me to fix your image, Graham. If you lose everything now, that's still about me. No, he said quietly. It's about me not being willing to let them have all of me anymore. We sat at the breakfast table in silence, the envelope between us like a third presence in the room. He ran a hand through his hair. I told them I wouldn't go through with a divorce, that I was stepping away from press obligations, that I was focusing on us, and that made them panic, I said. It made them think I was compromising the company for emotion. Are you? He looked up,